All right, so now let's talk about Ben Askren. Ben Askren, he was on a rocket ship to the stars. I mean, he came into the UFC with talking so much shit, and he had so much momentum behind him, and he built so much momentum so quickly. It really was impressive, considering he was a guy who, when he was fighting in one, really didn't have any traction. Nobody really cared about one. Nobody, everybody also discredited the fighters over there, and we've seen how they've done since Mighty Mouse and Eddie Alvarez and Sage Northcutt and some other North American guys with some name recognition are going over there. We're seeing how they're doing. So maybe those guys in one that Ben Askren was ragdolling, maybe they weren't so bad. That's beside the point. Anyways, Ben Askren obviously suffered a really terrible loss. Maybe one of the worst losses in UFC history, not just because of the nature of the loss, it being a 5-second knockout, but also due to the fact that, he talked so much shit. It really magnifies everything, which is why I really love shit talking, and why I was, kind of rooting for Ben in that one, because you really wanted to see the story play out with Ben. Like, if he beats Jorge, let's say, he's probably getting an immediate title shot against Kamaru Usman. And let's say he beats Usman, I think Ben is probably the guy to entice GSP out of retirement to get that super fight, or entice Khabib into maybe coming up. If Khabib, gets through Dustin and is still undefeated, maybe incite him to come up, and have some kind of super fight situation. So Ben Askren was really on the verge of superstardom. So where can he go from here? Obviously, he's not going to be able to advance his career in the same kind of way that a win over Jorge would have been able to advance his career. But from a fan's perspective, there's one extremely interesting matchup that's now on the table due to this loss. A matchup that it wouldn't have made sense. You wouldn't have been able to make it with Ben Askren on the trajectory that he was on and the trajectory that this other fighter is on. This other fighter I'm talking about is Demian Maia. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. We could actually have a super grapplers matchup in MMA of Ben Askren and Demian Maia. This is a real dream matchup that people would, toss around on the forums like it was Batman versus Superman or something. Like these two grappling behemoths. What would happen if they met? Because the thing is there has been a blueprint delivered on how to beat Demian Maia, right? Tyron Woodley did it, Colby Covington did it, Kamaru Usman did it, all in succession. And, that's have quality wrestling defense in order to use your wrestling as anti-wrestling to keep the fight on the feet. And then, in turn, strike and kickbox with Demian. And it's a much easier fight to win, right? Demian Maia, like Ben Askren, is one of these people who's truly one-dimensional. I mean that in a good way. Like, they're a one-trick pony, and that trick is almost impossible to defend against. So the interesting thing about Ben taking on Demian is Ben's the same kind of one-trick pony. He's only ever grappled. Like, we've actually seen Demian Maia strike a lot more than we've seen Ben Askren strike. So Demian Maia, I mean, he might be favored in a striking fight against Ben Askren. We really don't know what Ben Askren's pedigree is, and I would probably favor Demian Maia in a pure striking matchup. That's beside the point, though. I think that the point is that Ben is going to try to grapple Demian Maia. Like, what? I mean, nobody has ever, tried. That's like jumping into the snake pit, like nobody's ever tried to beat Demian with wrestling. So, imagine that. Imagine what that matchup would look like. I'm having a hard time. I mean, we've obviously never seen Ben Askren try to take somebody down with the pedigree of Demian Maia. So, I mean, what's Ben's submission defense going to look like? Is he going to be able to actually control Demian on the ground? Like, these guys are a couple of the last of the Mohicans in terms of, specialists in the sport. And with this loss that Ben just suffered, unfortunately, and Demian Maia on a 2-fight win streak, they're only separated by 2 spots in the rankings. Ben is ranked number 9 and Damian's ranked number 11. Ben just lost via one of the most devastating and brutal knockouts you've ever seen in UFC history. So, and I mean, he's 34 years old now. So you either don't want to see Ben Askren back for at least a year to see him try to heal his body and his brain and everything else. Or, you want to see him in a fight where there's not really a risk of taking damage. And I'm not saying that Damian is incapable of inflicting damage, but it would largely be a grappling fight, right? And not just any grappling fight, a grappling fight of perhaps the best jiu-jitsu grappler and perhaps the best wrestling grappler in the entire sport of mixed martial arts. I mean, I'm flabbergasted by the perspective of this fight. And although it's not, the direction that Ben wanted to go in, I mean, from a fan's perspective and from a guy, myself, who loves Ben Askren and loves, wants to see some more interesting matchups with him and doesn't think he's done yet, I think this is the perfect next step.